Welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, where we explore the stories, strategies, and insights of thought leaders who inspire us to think differently and lead better. Through candid conversations and expert perspectives, we dive into the challenges, breakthroughs, and practical lessons that shape exceptional leadership. 1995, Michael Jordan came back to basketball after playing baseball for several years. He was already Michael Jordan, 3 championships, 3 final MVPs, the most feared competitor in basketball. And then his team, the Chicago Bulls, lost in the second round of the playoffs. That summer, Jordan did something most successful people avoid doing once they've already made it. He went back to the beginning. He built a gym in his house, brought in teammates at 6 in the morning every day, and worked on the parts of his game that had been exposed. The fadeaway, the post-up, the strength to hold positions late in the games when bigger players try to wear him down. He was already the best, but he knew something most professionals forget. Your edge does not stay sharp because you once earned it. Your edge stays sharp because you keep earning it. Jordan won the next 3 championships. So here's the question for you. When was the last time your work made you noticeably better? Not busier, not more efficient, but better. Because this is where many mid-career professionals get stuck. They don't stop working, they stop sharpening their skills. Or stated differently, when was the last time you walked into work and treated it like a place to learn something, not just as a place to deliver something? Let me name the thing most mid-career professionals are quietly experiencing but haven't said out loud. Somewhere between year 8 and year 12, let's say, of a knowledge work career, something shifts. The title is good, the compensation's good, the reviews are good. The output, honestly, has never been better, especially in the last 2 years, because AI has put on a layer of polish on everything you ship. But the feeling of getting visibly better, the feeling that defined your first decade, that's gone. And you don't know exactly when it left. And because nothing is technically wrong, you misdiagnose it. And in my work with mid-career professionals, I hear various versions of the same 3 stories on repeat. The first story is around I lost my motivation. And motivation is almost always a symptom dressed up as a cause. Motivation doesn't evaporate on its own. It gets starved out by something upstream. When someone tells me they've lost their motivation, my next question always is, when was the last time you walked into a meeting genuinely unsure of whether or not you could pull it off? The answer is almost always silence, and that silence is the diagnosis. Motivation doesn't die from too much pressure, it often dies from too little, which is exactly the setup for the second type of story I hear, that I'm burnt out. Now, I want to be careful here because burnout is real and it should be taken seriously. But burnout and what I'm describing are different things. Burnout is exhaustion, the body and the mind saying no more. This plateau is something stranger. It's not depletion, it's not struggle, it's competent staleness. You're still delivering, the work is still going out the door, you're just not getting better at it. And that's harder to name than burnout because nothing is technically wrong. Burnout has a fever. This plateau has no temperature at all. And you can't fight what you can't feel, which is what makes the third story so seductive because it gives you a feeling. The third story is around I've hit my ceiling. Now, I'm not telling you everyone in this audience or listening to me can be a CEO. What I am telling you is that the actual ceiling for a healthy mid-career professional sits dramatically higher than the place where most plateaus form. Most of the time, the plateau is not your ceiling. The plateau is the floor of the room you've stopped trying to leave. So if it's not motivation, if it's not burnout, if it's not the ceiling, then what is it? Here's the reframe. You stop being a learner. I'm not saying you stop working hard. You are working probably harder than ever. Your calendar is full, the stakes are real, and the days are long. That's not the problem. The problem is what happens inside the work. For the first decade of your career, every project changed you. Every meeting taught you something. Every quarter, you walked out slightly different than when you walked in. The work was the curriculum. But somewhere along the way, that changed. The work kept coming, but the growth stopped coming with it. Effort and growth are 2 different things. They feel the same, but they're not the same. And the moment they separate, your edge starts to wear off. Not because you got worse, but because you stopped getting better. So, why does learning quietly turn off for capable, hardworking people who are still showing up, still delivering, and still doing good work? There are three forces that explain it. They're not obvious, they don't announce themselves, and because the work still gets done, most people miss them. But once you see them, you can't unsee them. And then there's a fourth force, newer, faster, and more dangerous, that is accelerating this plateau for almost every knowledge worker right now. I'll walk you through all four, then I'll give you three practical moves to reverse the pattern and start getting sharper again inside the work you already do. The first one, the room got too familiar. I want to tell you a story I keep coming back to with mid-career clients because almost no career maps more cleanly onto this mid-career plateau than Roger Federer. By 2013, Federer was 32 years old. He had won 17 major championships. He had been the best tennis player in the world for much of the previous decade. His name was already in the greatest of all time conversation. And then the story changed. His ranking slipped. His body was not responding the same way that it did when he was younger. Younger players were closing the gap. The shots that once gave him separation were no longer creating the same advantage. The tennis world began to whisper what people often whisper when a great performer hits the middle of the curve. Maybe the game has passed them by. Maybe this is what decline looks like. But Federer did not respond the way most successful people respond when the old formula stops working. He did not simply train harder at the game he already knew. He didn't double down on his strengths that had won him 17 majors. And he did not protect the old version of himself just because that version was the version that once made him great. He did something much harder. He admitted that the version of his game that had carried him to the top was not necessarily the version that would move him forward. So he became a student again, at 32, with 17 majors, with nothing left to prove to anyone except himself. He brought in Stefan Edberg, a Hall of Famer he could learn from. He experimented with a new racket, which is no small thing for an elite tennis player. At that level, the racket is not just equipment, it's an extension of your body. Changing it is not like switching brands of running shoes. It's like rewriting the feel of your own hand. And most importantly, he rebuilt the part of his game that had been the most exposed, his backhand. For years, the number one player in the world, Rafael Nadal, had punished him on that side. Federer had often survived by slicing, defending, buying time, and waiting for a better opening. But in his second act of his career, he stopped hiding the backhand. He started driving through it. He started attacking with it. He turned the liability into a weapon. And in 2017, at 35 years old, Federer once again won the Australian Open. Then he won Wimbledon. 4 years after people thought the story was ending, he was playing some of his best tennis ever. And this is the part of the story I want you to sit with. Federer was not an unknown. He was not starting over from the bottom. He was already great. But he had reached the point where his version of the game that had made him great had stopped stretching him. And the question is not whether you keep delivering the old version. You probably can for a while. The question is whether you're willing to do what Federer did. Set that old version down, change the tools, habits, and assumptions that once felt untouchable, and become a student of your own work again. And this is where the science comes in. Robert Bjork gives us another piece of this puzzle with the idea of desirable difficulties. His research in learning science states that learning that feels easy often produces fragile gains. Learning that feels effortful, awkward, and uncomfortable is usually the kind that lasts. The discomfort is not a side effect of the growth. The discomfort is the mechanism. And early in your career, that discomfort was everywhere. Every project was unfamiliar. Every meeting had someone on it who knew more than you. Every assignment forced you to build a new muscle. But by year 10, something changed. The rooms became familiar. The projects looked like previous ones. The problems are different, but the patterns, they feel the same. And the organization has decided that you are a known quantity. So it stops placing you in the rooms where you're forced to stretch. Not because anyone is trying to hold you back, but because they need you to deliver. No one tells you this in the moment your job description quietly changes. No one tells you that from this point forward, Finding harder rooms is your responsibility, but that's exactly what happens. Early in your career, the organization supplies the stretch. Later in your career, you have to go and find it. Federer figured this out at 32, and a lot of mid career professionals never do, unfortunately. And this is why this plateau lasts longer than it should. Not because they're done growing, but because they're still playing the old game in the rooms that no longer make them better. Condition two, you stopped watching your own tape. This is one habit that separates great performers from the very good ones across every high performance field. They watch their own tape. Surgeons run morbidity and mortality conferences every week. Fighter pilots debrief every single flight. The best quarterback of this generation and perhaps any generation, Tom Brady, watched film of himself, frame by frame, looking for the reads that he missed, the throws that he forced, and the moments his footwork drifted. Other quarterbacks studied the opponent. Brady studied himself. That's how he kept getting better at age 43 when his arm had been declining for a decade. Knowledge workers don't watch their own tape, almost ever. A researcher named Monique Boekaerts explained why, and it's one of the most underrated findings in literature. She showed that during any task, your brain runs two parallel tracks. One of them asks, am I getting better? The other one asks, am I protecting my image as a competent person? Both are always on. The question is, which one is dominant? What she found is that under career pressure, when your reputation is on the line, when stakes feel high, the self-protection track wins almost every time. People stop monitoring whether they're actually learning because honest monitoring is threatening. It might reveal that you're not as good as your title suggests. So the mind quietly does the protective thing. It stops looking. And this is why the plateau is psychologically protected. You can't learn from something you stop looking at. The third force comes from research by Wynn and Hadwin. They mapped how reflection turns experience into actual change. Without a reflection phase, the previous two phases don't compound. You can set goals, you can do the work, but if you don't sit down afterward and adjust, the loop doesn't close. And within days, most of what you could have learned evaporates. Mid-career professionals are the single most reflection-starved population in the modern workforce. Junior employees have unstructured time and built-in mentorship. Senior executives have coaches and offsites and board prep that forces them to think. Mid-career, you have back-to-back meetings, Slack channels that never sleep, and exactly zero forcing functions to think. The hardware for learning is intact, but the runtime conditions are gone. Put these three together, and you stop facing tougher competition, you stop watching your own film, and you stop closing the loop. These three forces are all pulling you in the same direction, all invisible because the work still gets done. That alone would be enough to explain the plateau. But something has changed in the last 2 years that's pouring gasoline on all these three. AI makes it incredibly easy to skip these repetitions. You reach for the model, it gives you a clean first draft, you revise it, you ship it, and the work gets done faster. And for a while, you don't notice. The results look the same. The work keeps going out. The reviews are still fine. The meetings still happen. But the muscle that generates sharp judgment is getting fewer reps because something else is generating the first version for you. Cognitive psychologists call this cognitive offloading. The basic idea is simple. When your brain knows something that can be outsourced, it often stops investing as much energy in building that ability internally. So in plain English, your mind gets very good at not doing what it believes something else will do for it. And once your mind learns that the model will handle the first pass, well, your mind slowly stops doing that first pass, quietly, efficiently, and without warning. So how do you start getting sharper? It's not by adding more hours, not by downloading another productivity app, not by waiting for your company to hand you that perfect development plan. You do it by putting growth back inside the work you already do with 3 moves. Move 1, the Federer move. Find a harder room. So in this move, once a quarter, put yourself in a room where you are not the most knowledgeable person. By mid-career, your biggest threat is not that the work gets easy. It's that the work is still demanding. The meetings may still be stressful, the deadlines may still be real, but demanding is not the same as developmental. Familiar difficulty is hard work inside a game you already know how to play. Growth is a harder room. That's what Federer found. At 32, with 17 majors behind him, he brought in Stefan Edberg. He put himself near someone who could see what he could not. He gave someone else permission to challenge the game that once made him great. It is hard to be successful and coachable at the same time, but that's the move. You need proximity to people, problems, and standards that make you sharper. Early in your career, the organization supplied the stretch. Later in the career, you have to find it yourself. Move number 2, the Brady move. Watch your own tape. Every great performer studies their own performance. Athletes watch film, surgeons review cases, pilots debrief flights. Elite performers do not rely on their memory alone. They look back on what actually happened because they know experience does not automatically become improvement. Tom Brady did not just study opponents, he studied himself. He understood something most professionals, once again, never fully accept. You can't improve what you refuse to look at. And this is where knowledge work has a problem. Most professionals don't watch their own tape. They finish the meeting and move to the next one. They ship the memo and move to the next deadline. The experience happens, but the lesson never gets extracted. So here's the move. Every week, let's say Friday afternoon for 15 minutes by yourself, no app, no complicated template, no productivity system, just 4 questions. First, what did I actually produce this week? Not what was on the calendar, not how busy you were, but what did you make? What decisions did you drive? Question number 2, what did I learn this week that I did not know on Monday? An actual sharpening of your judgment, not just a random fact. Maybe it's a pattern that you noticed, a better read on a person, or a mistake you now understand differently. The third question, what did I avoid this week that I should not have avoided? The plateau is often protected by avoidance. You avoid the conversation that would stretch you, the feedback that would expose you. Naming the avoidance matters because avoidance is often where growth is hiding. And the fourth question, what will I do differently next week? This is where the loop gets closed. Without this question, reflection becomes observation. With this question, reflection becomes behavior change. One adjustment, one harder conversation, one better question. One rep, you will not skip next week. The final move is the Jordan move. Take the reps back. We started this episode with Jordan in a home gym at 6 in the morning. I want to bring him back for this final move that belongs to him. What Jordan was doing in the Breakfast Club was simple. He was taking the reps himself. He wasn't outsourcing the work that was supposed to make him better. He wasn't watching someone else run the drills and calling that practice. He showed up, he did the work, because he understood something every professional needs to remember. The reps are not the obstacle. The reps are the point. The danger is not that you use AI, use it. You should. Use it for summaries, formatting, meeting notes, templates, routine drafts, cleanup. Those time savings are real. But for the work that builds judgment, take the reps back. Here's the rule. It's called the first draft rule. Anything that requires your judgment, you draft first before letting AI touch it. That's the whole rule. Everything. Look at your calendar, find one piece of work that requires real judgment, not formatting work or summarizing or polishing, but the work where you actually have to think. Block 30 minutes off on your calendar, open up a blank document, draft it badly, argue with yourself on the page, name what you believe, name what you're unsure about, and name what's at stake. Then bring in the model as a sparring partner. Ask where your logic is weak, what you're missing, and what a smart critic would challenge. Every week, one block, 30 minutes, first draft is yours. That's the Jordan move. It's quiet, it's unglamorous, it's 6 in the morning when nobody is watching, but judgment is built in the reps that you refuse to skip. I want to leave you with one question, the question Jordan answered in the gym. Federer answered when he rebuilt his game, and Brady answered every time he reviewed his own performance. Are you still getting sharper? Not just busier, not more polished, not more efficient, but sharper. Your calendar will not ask that. Your inbox is not going to ask you that, but your future will. The edge gets dull when you stop putting yourself in harder rooms, stop reflecting honestly on your own performance, and stop taking the reps that build judgment. You don't need to overhaul your life, but you do need a rhythm that keeps you sharp. Because remember, you don't lose your edge because time passes. You lose it when you stop doing the things that keep the edge alive. I hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights. If it has, I ask you to share it with someone who would also benefit from it. If you've been enjoying and gaining knowledge from this podcast, then subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast and additional learning resources. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify and leave up to a 5-star review.